The alarm screamed through Meridian 7 station at exactly 1947 Galactic Standard Time. Red lights flashed in every corridor, and automated voices announced the lockdown in 12 different languages. Jinho barely heard it. He was 3 levels below the main deck, wedged between 2 massive cooling pipes, trying to fix a leak that had been dripping for weeks. The wrench slipped from his greasy hands and clattered onto the metal floor. He sighed, wiped his forehead, and reached for it again. The maintenance tunnels were always hot, always loud, and always forgotten by everyone else on the station. That was fine with him. Jinho preferred the quiet company of machines to the chaos of the diplomatic levels above. Far above him, Ambassador Vara was tearing through her quarters with a desperation that made her security detail step back. Her claws scraped against the walls as she searched every corner, every shadow, every possible hiding spot. Her cubs were gone. Kess and Rin, barely 3 seasons old, had vanished from the secured rooms. The Kethrin were apex predators from a world where weakness meant death. Their cubs were precious, protected with an intensity that other species found frightening. Vara's mate had died defending their den from raiders 2 years ago. These cubs were everything to her. And now they were missing on an alien station, surrounded by species who feared them or worse, might harm them. Commander Thel arrived at the quarters within minutes, his insectoid body clicking with agitation. "Ambassador, we need you to remain calm. The security systems show no breach. They must still be on the station." Vara's lips pulled back, showing teeth designed to tear through bone. "Find them! Find them now, or I will tear this station apart myself." Thel knew she meant it. He activated every security team on Meridian 7. Hundreds of personnel began searching, scanners sweeping every level, every room, every ventilation shaft. The diplomatic section locked down completely. No one in, no one out. Deep in the maintenance tunnels, Jinho finally fixed the leak. He sat back against the wall, exhausted. His shift communicator had died hours ago, a cheap piece of equipment that never held a charge properly. He would need to climb back to the main level to check in, but he allowed himself a few minutes of rest first. That was when he heard the sound. A small whimper, barely audible over the hum of the station's systems. Jinho went still, listening. There it was again, coming from the darkness of a side tunnel. He grabbed his flashlight and moved carefully toward the sound. The tunnel narrowed, forcing him to crouch. The air here was warmer, heated by the thermal vents that ran throughout this section. His light caught movement and he froze. 2 pairs of eyes reflected back at him, glowing in the darkness. They were large eyes, golden and slitted like a cat's, but set in faces that were distinctly not human. The creatures were small, maybe the size of earth dogs, covered in scaled fur that shifted between dark blue and black. They had 4 legs, long tails, and small horns just beginning to grow from their heads. One of them hissed at him, a sound that would have terrified most species. Its tiny claws extended, scraping against the metal floor. The other one, slightly smaller, pressed itself against the wall, trembling. Jinho had seen pictures of Kethrin before. The adult ambassadors were massive, powerful beings that most humans avoided. These had to be their young. But what were they doing down here? He kept his movements slow and gentle. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The larger cub hissed again, but there was fear in the sound, not aggression. Jinho could see scratches on its side, probably from squeezing through the tight spaces of the station's infrastructure. The smaller one's paw was bleeding slightly. He sat down, making himself smaller, less threatening. From his pack, he pulled out his lunch, leftover protein bars that he had not eaten. He broke off a piece and tossed it gently toward the cubs, not too close, giving them space. The larger cub sniffed the air. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the scent. Hunger won over fear, and it crept forward, snatched the food, and retreated. The smaller one watched with wide eyes. Jinho tossed another piece, then another. Slowly, carefully, he coaxed them closer. He had grown up on Earth helping his grandmother with her animal rescue center. She had taught him that all creatures, no matter how dangerous, were just trying to survive. Fear made them aggressive. Kindness made them curious. "You're lost, aren't you?" he said quietly. "Scared and hurt and lost, I get it. This place is confusing." The cubs edged closer. They were still wary, but the food and his calm voice were working. Jinho could see they were exhausted. Their movements were slow, their eyes heavy. They had probably been wandering for hours, trapped in the maze of tunnels. He took off his jacket and laid it on the floor beside him. The fabric was warm from his body heat, and the smaller cub approached it cautiously. It sniffed the jacket, then looked up at Jinho with those enormous golden eyes. "Go ahead," he said. "It's warmer than the floor." The cub stepped onto the jacket and immediately lay down with a small sound of relief. The larger one watched for a moment, then joined its sibling. They pressed against each other, seeking comfort in familiar presence. Jinho stayed very still. His back ached from sitting on the hard floor, and his dead communicator meant no one knew where he was. He should probably try to signal someone, find a way to alert security that he had found something important. But the cubs were finally calming down, and any sudden movement might scare them again. The smaller cub, Rin, shifted closer to him. Its body heat was surprisingly warm against his leg. Then slowly it climbed onto his lap and curled up against his chest. The larger one, Kes, watched this for a moment before doing the same, draping itself across Jinho's stomach. Their weight was substantial, maybe 20 kilograms each, but Jinho did not move. He could feel their hearts beating fast at first, then gradually slowing as they relaxed. The vibration that started in their chests was like a cat's purr, but deeper, more resonant. It was the sound of contentment, of feeling safe. Jinho rested one hand gently on the smaller cub's back. The scaled fur was soft under his palm, warm and alive. Above him, somewhere in the station, alarms were probably still blaring. People were probably searching frantically. But down here in the warm darkness of the maintenance tunnels, 2 lost children had found someone who made them feel protected. His eyes grew heavy. The exhaustion of a long shift, the warmth of the cubs, and the steady rhythm of their purring all combined to pull him toward sleep. Just a few minutes, he told himself. Just until his strength returned. Within moments, all 3 of them were asleep, unaware that above them the entire station was in chaos. The security chief, a being called Morvan, had served on Meridian 7 for 15 years. He had handled diplomatic incidents, prevented 3 assassination attempts, and once stopped a small war from breaking out in the food court. But nothing had prepared him for an enraged Kethrin mother. Vera moved through the corridors like a living storm. Her diplomatic robes were torn where her claws had shredded them in frustration. Other species pressed themselves against walls as she passed, instinct screaming at them to hide from the apex predator in their midst. 2 security personnel tried to suggest she return to her quarters and let them handle the search. She had roared at them so loudly that one had fainted. "Status report," Morvan demanded into his communicator, watching the ambassador from a safe distance. "Nothing on levels 1 through 7, came the reply. "Thermal scans show normal patterns. No sign of the cubs. Keep searching. Expand to the lower levels. Check every room, every storage area, Wait." A new voice cut in, belonging to the station's AI coordinator. "I have 2 small heat signatures on level 8, maintenance section B. They were not there an hour ago." Morvan's heart rate increased. Level 8 was mostly automated with minimal personnel. If the cubs had made it down there, they could have been injured by machinery or trapped in tight spaces. "Send all available units. Go now, but approach carefully. If they are frightened, they could be dangerous." Vera heard the transmission. Before anyone could stop her, she was running toward the nearest access shaft. Her powerful legs carried her faster than most species could track. Security scrambled to follow, but she was already gone, descending into the lower levels with the single-minded focus of a mother protecting her young. In the maintenance tunnel, Jinho woke to the sound of heavy footsteps. His neck was stiff, his back screaming in protest from the awkward position. The cubs on his chest stirred but did not wake, their purring continuing softly. He blinked in confusion, trying to remember where he was and why he felt so heavy. Then he looked down and saw the 2 alien cubs draped across him. Memory flooded back. He needed to stay calm, needed to not startle them. Very carefully he reached for his flashlight, but his arm was pinned under Kess's body weight. The footsteps grew louder. Multiple sets moving fast. Jinho opened his mouth to call out, but then he heard something that made him freeze. A deep rumbling growl that echoed through the tunnels. The sound of something large and dangerous approaching. The security team rounded the corner first, weapons drawn, lights cutting through the darkness. They stopped abruptly when their beams illuminated the scene before them. Jinho, sitting against the wall with his eyes wide, looked back at them. On his chest and stomach, 2 Kethrin cubs slept peacefully, completely relaxed. "Don't," Jinho whispered urgently. Don't make any loud noises. They just fell asleep. The lead security officer, a tall being with 4 arms, stared in disbelief. Catherine cubs were known to be aggressive, their play often resulting in injuries to adults of other species. Yet here was a human, one of the supposedly fragile beings from the death world Earth, calmly serving as a bed for 2 of the galaxy's most dangerous young. Before anyone could speak, Vera arrived. She pushed through the security team with such force that 2 of them fell. Her eyes locked onto her cubs, and a sound emerged from her throat that was part relief, part anguish. It was the cry of a mother who had feared the worst and found hope instead. Jinho saw her approaching and understood immediately that she was the cub's mother. He recognized the same coloring, the same golden eyes, though hers were filled with tears. He kept his voice gentle and calm. "They are safe," he said in his broken galactic common. "I found them hurt and scared. I gave them food. They sleep now, warm and safe." Vera stopped a few feet away. Her massive form towered over the human, her claws capable of tearing him apart in seconds. Every instinct told her to snatch her cubs and flee. But something in the human's eyes made her pause. There was no fear there, only concern and gentleness. "May I give them back to you?" Jinho asked, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Vera nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched as the human carefully lifted Rin first, supporting the cub's full weight with both arms. He stood slowly, his muscles straining from sitting in one position for so long. He walked 3 steps toward Vara and gently transferred the sleeping cub into her arms. Rin stirred, smelled her mother, and made a small chirping sound of contentment before settling back into sleep. Vara clutched her smaller cub to her chest, her eyes closing briefly in relief. Then she watched as Jinho went back for Kes. The larger cub was heavier, and Jinho struggled slightly with the weight. But he managed, carrying Kes over and placing him in Vara's other arm. Only when both cubs were safely with their mother did Jinho step back, breathing hard from the effort. "They were very brave," he said. "Lost and hurt, but they did not give up. You should be proud." Vera looked at this strange human with his soft skin and gentle words. In her culture, strength was everything. Power determined status. Yet this being had no power, no claws, no natural weapons. He could have been killed easily by her cubs if they had chosen to attack. Instead, he had shown them kindness, had made them feel safe enough to sleep on him. "You have my gratitude," Vera said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved my cubs. This debt cannot be repaid." Jinho smiled, the expression transforming his tired face. "No debt. They were children who needed help. That is what we do, yes? We help." The security team watched this exchange with growing amazement. Morven, who had arrived moments ago, stepped forward carefully. "We need to get everyone to medical. The cubs need to be examined, and you humans should be checked as well." Jinho nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. His legs felt weak, and his hands were shaking from the adrenaline finally leaving his system. One of the security officers offered to help him walk, but he waved them off. As they made their way back through the tunnels toward the upper levels, word spread through the station. The missing cubs had been found safe and sleeping on a human maintenance worker. It seemed impossible, absurd even. Catherine cubs did not trust strangers. They certainly did not sleep peacefully on aliens from unknown worlds. By the time they reached the medical bay, a crowd had gathered. Diplomats, staff members, and curious onlookers pressed against the barriers that security had hastily erected. They wanted to see the human who had somehow calmed the untamable, who had achieved what should have been impossible. Jinho ignored them all. He was focused on making sure the cubs got proper medical attention. He watched as the doctors carefully examined Kes and Rin, treating their minor injuries and checking for any signs of trauma. Vara never left their side, but her eyes kept returning to the human who stood quietly in the corner. Commander Thel approached Jinho with a mixture of relief and bureaucratic concern. "There will need to be a full report. How did you come to be in that section? Why did you not report finding the cubs immediately?" "My communicator was dead," Jinho explained simply. "I found them, they were scared, I helped them calm down. They fell asleep. I fell asleep. That is all? That is all?" Thel's antennae twitched in disbelief. "You made contact with Catherine cubs without any training, without any protective equipment, and you describe it as nothing special?" Jinho shrugged. "They were just scared kids. Every kid deserves to feel safe no matter what species." Those words spread through the crowd like fire. The other diplomats began murmuring among themselves, translating the phrase into dozens of languages. Every kid deserves to feel safe. It was such a simple concept, yet it held a profound truth that many had forgotten in the complex politics of the galactic community. Vara approached Jinho as the doctors finished their work. The cubs were tired but healthy, already demanding food with the resilience of youth. She looked at the human for a long moment, and then did something that shocked everyone watching. She bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect in Kithran culture. "You are friend to my family now," she said formally. "This I swear before all witnesses." Jinho did not fully understand the significance, but he smiled and bowed back clumsily. Around them, the station buzzed with the beginning of something unprecedented, though no one yet knew what that would be. The story spread through Meridian 7 faster than a plasma leak. By the next morning, everyone on the station knew about the human maintenance worker who had befriended 2 Kethran cubs. The tale grew with each retelling, becoming more dramatic, more impossible. Some versions had Jinho fighting off dangers to protect the cubs. Others claimed he had used some kind of human mind control. Jinho knew none of this. He had gone back to his small quarters after the medical check, slept for 12 hours and woken up to find his communicator full of messages. Most were from people he had never met, asking questions he did not understand. A few were from his supervisor, demanding to know why he had not filed proper reports. He deleted them all and went to the cafeteria for breakfast. That was when he realized something had changed. The moment he walked in, conversation stopped. Beings from a dozen different species turned to stare at him. A few pointed. Others whispered behind their hands, tentacles, or whatever appendages they used for communication. Jinho grabbed a tray and got his food, trying to ignore the attention. He found an empty table in the corner and sat down, hoping people would lose interest. Instead, a group of humans from the engineering department approached him. "Is it true?" asked Minho, a fellow maintenance worker. "You really had those predator cubs sleeping on you?" Jinho nodded, chewing his food. "They were tired. I was warm, simple." "Simple?" Minho laughed in disbelief. "Do you know what Kethran cubs can do? I saw a video once where one of them accidentally broke a Vakrian's arm just playing. They are dangerous." "They were scared children," Jinho said quietly. "Not dangerous. Just scared." This answer seemed to frustrate Minho, who had expected something more exciting. But before he could press further, a message came over the station-wide communication system. "Jinho of Earth, please report to Commander Thel's office immediately." The cafeteria went silent again. Being summoned to the commander's office usually meant trouble. Jinho sighed, abandoned his half-eaten breakfast, and made his way through the corridors. The stairs followed him everywhere now. It was uncomfortable. Commander Thel's office was on the administrative level, a place Jinho had never visited before. The door was open, and inside he found not just Thel, but also Ambassador Vera and 3 other diplomats he did not recognize. His stomach tightened with worry. Had he done something wrong? "Jinho of Earth," Thel began formally. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Jinho sat in the chair offered, which was too small for his human frame. He waited, hands folded in his lap, trying to look respectful. Vara spoke next, her voice much calmer than the previous night. "I have requested this meeting. There are matters we must discuss about what happened with my cubs. I am sorry if I did something wrong," Jinho said immediately. "I was just trying to help." "Wrong." Vara's expression shifted, and Jinho realized she was showing amusement. "No, you did nothing wrong. You did something remarkable." One of the other diplomats, a being with blue skin and multiple eyes, leaned forward. "What Ambassador Vera means is that your actions have raised important questions. The Kethran are known throughout the galaxy as proud warriors, fierce protectors. Their young are said to be untouchable by outsiders. Yet you touched them, held them, and they trusted you." How Jinho thought about this for a moment, I do not know. I just treated them like any scared children. Gentle voice, slow movements gave them food and warmth. "This works for most creatures. Most creatures on Earth, perhaps," the blue diplomat said. "But Earth is a death world. Your planet has predators that would terrify other species. Have you dealt with such predators before?" "My grandmother ran an animal rescue," Jinho explained. "I helped her since I was young. We saved injured animals, even dangerous ones. Bears, wolves, big cats. The trick is to understand they are not trying to be mean. They are just trying to survive. If you show them you are safe, they calm down." The diplomats exchanged glances. Commander Thel's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of deep thought. Vara watched Jinho with an intensity that made him nervous, but there was something else in her eyes now. Respect. On my world, Vara said slowly. We have a tradition. When someone saves the life of our cubs, when they show true courage and kindness, we offer them a great honor. We name them kin by choice. They become family not by blood but by deed. Jinho blinked, not fully understanding. Family? Yes, this is not given lightly. In all of Kethrin history, only 17 outsiders have received this honor. I wish to make you the 18th. Vara stood towering over the seated human. Will you accept this bond, Jinho of Earth? Will you be kin to my family? The room was silent. Jinho looked at the faces around him, seeing shock, curiosity, and in Vara's case, hope. He thought about the two small cubs, how they had trembled in fear before finding comfort. He thought about his grandmother, who always said that kindness creates connections stronger than any chain. I would be honored, he said simply. Vara placed her large hand on his shoulder, claws carefully retracted. She spoke words in her own language, a flowing series of sounds that Jinho did not understand but felt were important. When she finished, she switched back to Galactic Common. It is done. You are kin now. Under Kethrin law, any who harm you harm my family. Any who help you help my cubs. This bond is recognized across our entire species. Commander Thel cleared his throat. This is unprecedented. A human granted kinship with the Kethrin. The political implications are significant. Politics mean nothing compared to family, Vara said firmly. Then she looked at Jinho with something like warmth. The cubs have been asking for you. They remember your scent. Would you visit them? Jinho's face lit up with a genuine smile. I would like that very much. The visit was arranged for that afternoon. When Jinho arrived at the diplomatic quarters, now under less intense security, he found Kes and Rin playing with what looked like alien toys. The moment they saw him, both cubs abandoned their game and rushed toward him. Vara tensed instinctively, ready to intervene if needed, but Jinho simply knelt down and let the cubs approach. They bumped against him with their heads, their version of an affectionate greeting, nearly knocking him over with their enthusiasm. Their purring filled the room, a sound of pure joy. They remember me, Jinho said, laughing as Rin tried to climb onto his lap, while Kes sniffed his pockets, probably looking for more food. Kethrin never forget, Vara said softly, especially not someone who made them feel safe when they were frightened. Over the next few days, word of Jinho's new status spread beyond Meridian 7. The Kethrin Council sent formal recognition of the kinship bond. Other predator species took notice. A delegate from the Vorkan, a race of massive bear-like beings, requested a meeting with Jinho. Then a Threxian diplomat, whose species resembled giant predatory birds, did the same. They all wanted to understand how this human had achieved what their own specialists could not. Interacting with young predator species was considered extremely dangerous work, requiring years of training and often resulting in injuries. Yet Jinho had done it naturally, instinctively, with no training at all. Jinho found himself invited to more meetings, asked more questions, pulled away from his maintenance work. He did not particularly enjoy the attention, but he answered honestly every time. There was no secret technique, no special human ability, just patience, gentleness, and the willingness to see scared children instead of dangerous beasts. His fellow human workers watched this transformation with amazement. Minho cornered him one day in the maintenance bay. You are becoming famous. Everyone wants to talk to you. How does it feel? Jinho shrugged, tightening a bolt on a cooling unit. Strange. I just helped some kids. Why is that so special? Because nobody else could do it, Minho said. Or maybe nobody else tried. You showed them something new about humans, about what we can do. I showed them we care, Jinho corrected. That is all. But it was not all, and deep down Jinho was beginning to understand that. His simple act of kindness had opened a door that many thought was sealed shut. It had challenged assumptions about predators and prey, about danger and safety, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of alien species. In her quarters, Vara watched her cubs play with the human toy that Jinho had brought them, a simple stuffed animal from Earth. Kes and Rin treated it like precious treasure, carrying it everywhere, protecting it fiercely. She thought about the human who had changed everything with nothing more than a gentle heart, and realized that perhaps Earth had not sent warriors to the stars. They had sent something far more powerful. They had sent caregivers. 3 weeks after the incident in the maintenance tunnels, Jinho's life had become something he barely recognized. His small quarters now received daily visitors. Diplomats, scientists, and curious beings from across the station sought his advice on everything from childcare protocols to interspecies communication. His work schedule had been adjusted to accommodate these meetings, much to his supervisor's frustration. But the biggest change came every third day when Vera brought Kes and Rin to visit him. During what she called socialization time, the cubs had grown attached to Jinho in a way that surprised even their mother. They would wait by the door of their quarters, ears perked up, listening for his distinctive footsteps in the corridor. Today was one of those visiting days. Jinho arrived at the diplomatic quarters carrying a bag of supplies. He had learned that the cubs loved earth fruits, especially apples, which crunched satisfyingly under their sharp teeth. He also brought a ball, because he had discovered that despite being apex predators, they were still children who loved to play. Vera opened the door before he could knock. "They heard you coming 2 minutes ago," she said with amusement. Rin has been pacing like a caged hunter. Inside, both cubs launched themselves at Jinho the moment they saw him. He had learned to brace himself for their enthusiastic greetings, but they still nearly knocked him down. Their scaled fur was warm under his hands as he scratched behind their small horns, finding the spots that made them purr loudest. "Brought treats," Jinho said, pulling out the apples. He had learned to cut them into pieces first after Rin had nearly choked trying to swallow one whole. The cubs devoured the fruit, their golden eyes bright with happiness. Vera watched this interaction with a mix of emotions. In Kethran culture, cubs were typically raised with strict discipline and constant vigilance. Softness was seen as weakness. Yet here was Jinho, showing pure affection to her young, and they were thriving under his attention. They seemed calmer, more confident, and paradoxically more obedient when he was around. "I have news," Vara said as the cubs settled down to chew their treats. "The Vorkan delegation has made a formal request. They want you to help with their younglings." Jinho looked up from where he sat on the floor. "Help how?" "Their young are entering the socialization phase. It is a difficult time when they must learn to control their strength and aggression. Traditionally, this training involves many injuries to the handlers. They believe you might have a better method." "I do not have training for this," Jinho protested. "I just know how to be gentle and patient." "That is precisely what they need," Vara said. "Will you consider it?" Before Jinho could answer, his communicator chimed. It was a message from the Threxian ambassador, requesting an urgent meeting. Then another message came, this time from a species Jinho had never heard of, asking if he could consult on their juvenile care facility. Vera saw his overwhelmed expression and made a decision. "Come, we need to talk about your future." She led him to her private office while a security officer watched the cubs. The room was decorated in Kethran style, with weapons on the walls and deep red fabrics everywhere. Vara gestured for him to sit, then poured 2 cups of a hot beverage that smelled like cinnamon. "You have become something unexpected," she began, a bridge between species. "What you do naturally without thinking is something that the rest of us must struggle to achieve. Do you understand how rare this is?" Jinho sipped the drink, finding it surprisingly pleasant. "I just treat everyone with kindness. This should not be rare." "But it is," Vera insisted. "Most species see others through the lens of threat assessment. Predators see prey see predators. We are all trapped by our evolutionary instincts. But humans, it seems, have learned to override these instincts. You look at my cubs and see children first, predators second." "They are children," Jinho said simply. "Yes, but try telling that to a Felnar or a Kilon. They see Kethran cubs and their prey instincts scream danger. They cannot help it. Yet you feel no fear." Jinho thought about this. "I feel fear sometimes. But fear does not mean something is bad. It just means I should be careful and respectful." This statement made Vera pause. She had never considered fear in that way before. In her culture, fear was weakness to be eliminated. But perhaps the human understanding was different, more nuanced. "There is something happening," Vara continued. "Something important. Other species are watching what you do with my cubs. They are questioning their own approaches to interspecies relations. The Galactic Council has taken notice." "The Council?" Jinho felt his stomach tighten. He had heard of the Galactic Council, the governing body that made decisions affecting billions of beings. The idea that they were paying attention to him was terrifying. "Do not worry," Vera said quickly. "This is good attention. They see potential for something new, something better. But they will want to test you, to see if what you do can be taught to others." Over the next week, Jinho found himself in situations he had never imagined. The Vorkan delegation invited him to their quarters where 3 young Vorkans, each twice his size, were causing chaos. Their handlers looked exhausted and showed multiple bandages from training injuries. The young Vorkans, named Tulo, Kava, and Bren, immediately focused on Jinho when he entered. Their territorial instincts made them approach aggressively, trying to intimidate this stranger. Jinho stood still, kept his breathing calm, and waited. The largest Tulo got close enough to sniff him. Jinho slowly reached into his bag and pulled out something he had brought from Earth, a jar of honey. Vorkans, he had learned, shared a distant evolutionary ancestor with Earth bears. It was worth trying. He opened the jar and let Tulo smell it. The young Vorkan's aggressive posture changed instantly. The sweet scent triggered something primal, something that bypassed aggression and went straight to curiosity. Tulo made a questioning sound. Jinho put a small amount of honey on his palm and offered it. Tulo licked it cautiously, then with more enthusiasm. The other 2 young Vorkans pushed forward, wanting to try this amazing new taste. Within minutes, all 3 were sitting calmly, waiting their turn for honey, their earlier aggression forgotten. The Vorkan handlers stared in disbelief. "How did you do that?" the lead handler asked. "I thought about what might make them happy instead of what might make them behave," Jinho explained. "Happy children are usually good children." This simple philosophy began to spread. Jinho visited the Threxian juvenile facility, where young bird-like beings were struggling with flight training. He suggested making it fun instead of mandatory, turning it into games rather than drills. The results were immediate and remarkable. He consulted with the Quilon, a prey species who lived in constant fear of others. He showed them that teaching their young about predators through controlled positive interactions was better than teaching them pure avoidance. A young Quilon who had met Kes and Rin under safe conditions learned that not all predators were immediate threats. With each success, Jinho's reputation grew. But so did something else, something more important. The different species on Meridian 7 began to talk to each other more openly. Parents from various species started sharing childcare strategies. Predators and prey species found common ground in their love for their young. One evening, Jinho returned to his quarters exhausted but satisfied. He found Vera waiting outside his door with both cubs. This was unusual as visits were scheduled days in advance. "Is something wrong?" he asked immediately. "No," Vera said. "Everything is right. The cubs wanted to see you. They were restless, asking for you in their own way. I realized that I was still holding on to old ways, scheduling and controlling everything. But cubs need spontaneity. They need to follow their hearts sometimes." She paused, then continued with obvious difficulty. "You are teaching me to be a better mother, Jinho. Not through words, but through example. I have been so focused on making my cubs strong that I forgot to make sure they feel loved." Jinho felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You love them very much. Anyone can see that." "Yes, but do they feel it? Do they know it in their hearts?" Farah looked at her cubs, who were already pressing against Jinho, seeking his affection. "They know it from you. That is a gift beyond price." That night, Jinho broke his own routine. Instead of sending the cubs back after an hour, he invited them to stay longer. They watched Earth videos together, the cubs fascinated by images of their planet's various animals. They especially loved the big cats, recognizing something familiar in those distant cousins. Rin fell asleep against Jinho's side, exactly as she had in the maintenance tunnel weeks ago. Kes tried to stay awake but eventually gave in, his head resting on Jinho's lap. Farah watched this scene and understood something profound. Her species had spent millennia building walls between themselves and others, calling it strength. But maybe true strength was the ability to be vulnerable, to trust, to love openly. As Jinho gently stroked Rin's scales, humming a lullaby his grandmother used to sing, Vera made a decision. She would speak to the Galactic Council personally. She would tell them that humanity had something precious to offer the galaxy, something that could not be measured in weapons or technology. They offered connection, understanding, and the simple but revolutionary idea that kindness was not weakness but the strongest foundation for any relationship. 6 months after finding 2 scared cubs in a maintenance tunnel, Jinho stood in the Galactic Summit Hall wearing clothes that felt too formal and too tight. The hall was enormous, designed to accommodate species of vastly different sizes and needs. Thousands of beings filled the seats, representatives from hundreds of worlds all gathered for the annual summit on interspecies cooperation. Jinho had not wanted to come. When the invitation arrived marked as mandatory, he had tried to decline. But Commander Thel had insisted, and Vara had personally escorted him to the transport, giving him no choice. Now he stood backstage, hands sweating, wondering what he was supposed to say to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "You will be fine," Vara said beside him. She looked magnificent in her formal ambassadorial robes, every inch the powerful diplomat. Kess and Rin, now significantly larger, sat at her feet, behaving with unusual calm. They sensed the importance of this moment. "I am just a maintenance worker," Jinho whispered. "These are leaders, scientists, philosophers. What can I tell them that they do not already know?" "The truth," Vara said simply. "Tell them the truth of what you showed me and my cubs." A being that looked like a floating jellyfish appeared, its translator device announcing it was time for their presentation. Jinho's heart hammered as he walked onto the stage with Vara. The sight of the massive audience made his legs feel weak. Thousands of eyes in more varieties than he could count focused on him. Vara spoke first, her voice amplified through the hall's systems. "Honored delegates, I present to you Jinho of Earth. 6 months ago he saved my cubs. But he did more than that. He showed me that strength and kindness are not enemies. They are partners. I have asked him here to share what he has learned." She stepped back, leaving Jinho alone at the center of the stage. He looked out at the audience and felt panic rising. But then Rin chirped softly from the side of the stage, the sound she made when seeking comfort. It grounded him, reminded him why he was here. "I do not have fancy words," Jinho began, his voice shaking slightly. "I am not a diplomat or a scientist. I fix broken pipes and cooling systems, but I learned something from my grandmother, who taught me about animals on Earth. She said that every creature, no matter how dangerous, just wants to feel safe and loved." He paused, gathering his thoughts. The hall was completely silent. "When I found the cubs, I did not think about them being predators. I saw 2 scared children who were lost and hurt. I treated them the way I would want someone to treat me if I was scared and alone. With gentleness, with patience, with kindness." A voice called out from the audience belonging to a species Jinho did not recognize. "But Catherine cubs are dangerous. You could have been killed." "Yes," Jinho agreed. "But they could have been killed too if no one helped them. Fear is natural, but it should not stop us from doing what is right. We just need to be careful and respectful." Another voice, this time from a Kelon representative. "You say this because you are from a death world. You do not understand true fear." Jinho thought about this carefully before responding. "Earth has many dangerous animals. My grandmother was once attacked by a bear she was trying to help. It broke her arm and gave her scars she carried forever. But she never stopped helping animals. Do you know what she told me? She said the bear was not evil. It was scared and in pain. Fear made it attack. And she said that understanding this did not make her weak. It made her wise." The Kelon representative went silent. Around the hall, beings began murmuring to each other, translating and discussing this perspective. Jinho continued, feeling slightly more confident. "I think maybe all of us are like scared animals sometimes. We attack because we are afraid. We avoid others because we do not understand them. But what if we tried something different? What if we looked for the scared child inside everyone, instead of just seeing the dangerous outside?" A ripple of reaction moved through the audience. Some seemed intrigued, others skeptical, but everyone was listening. Then something unexpected happened. From the audience, a young Scaran delegate stood up. The Scaran were known as one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy, territorial and quick to violence. This particular delegate looked young, barely an adult by their species standards. "I request permission to approach the stage," the Scaran announced. Security personnel immediately tensed, but Vara gave a small nod of approval. The young Scaran walked down the aisle toward the stage, their movements deliberate and slow. As they climbed the stairs to the stage level, Jinho noticed they were trembling. The Scaran stopped several feet from Jinho, their green scales reflecting the stage lights. "I have a question," they said, and Jinho could hear the strain in their voice. "How do you control the fear? I am here at this summit, surrounded by thousands of beings. Some are my species' ancient enemies. Some are predators who would have hunted my ancestors. I feel fear every moment. How do you make it stop? The question hung in the air. Jinho realized that this was not just one young delegate's problem. This was everyone's problem. The entire galaxy had been built on fear, on maintaining distances, on carefully negotiated treaties that kept species apart more than they brought them together. You do not make it stop, Jinho said gently. Fear is part of living, but you do not let it make your decisions. You feel the fear, you respect it, and then you choose kindness anyway. The Scarran's trembling intensified. They looked like they might collapse. Without thinking, Jinho stepped forward and did something that made the security personnel rush toward the stage. He put his hand on the Scarran's shoulder. The physical contact should have triggered the Scarran's defensive reflexes. They were a species that viewed uninvited touch as an act of aggression, but something in Jinho's gentle presence and the calm steadiness of his voice bypassed those instincts. Breathe, Jinho said softly, slow and steady. You are safe here. Everyone in this room wants the same thing you want. To be understood, to be accepted, to go home at the end of the day knowing they did something good. The young Scarran's breathing gradually slowed. The trembling eased. After a long moment, they looked at Jinho with something like wonder. How did you do that? I just reminded you that you are not alone, Jinho said. We are all scared sometimes. That is okay. The Scarran returned to their seat, moving slowly, processing what had just happened. The entire hall had witnessed it. This simple act of cross-species comfort that should have been impossible. The summit erupted into discussion. Delegates stood, calling for attention, wanting to speak. The moderator, an ancient being whose species had founded the Galactic Council, raised multiple appendages for silence. What we have witnessed, the moderator said, is something that perhaps we have been lacking. This human speaks of kindness as if it were a skill, a tool, a strength. We have built our civilization on treaties and laws and careful boundaries, but perhaps we have forgotten something more fundamental. Over the next hour, the summit transformed from its planned agenda into something unprecedented. Species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries began to share experiences. A Felnar delegate from a prey species described how her child had befriended a young Kethran through a program Jinho had helped develop. They were scared at first, she said, but they learned that fear could be overcome through understanding. A Vorkan representative stood and announced that their traditional, harsh training methods for young had been replaced with gentler approaches. Based on Jinho's consultations, injuries had decreased by 70%, and the young were learning faster and with more enthusiasm. One by one, species that Jinho had worked with over the past 6 months shared similar stories. The evidence was overwhelming. This simple human approach of treating others with gentleness and respect was not just nice, it was effective. The moderator called for a vote. I proposed the creation of the Human Liaison Program. We would recruit humans with their unique capacity for cross-species empathy to serve as mediators, caregivers, and bridge builders throughout the galaxy. All in favor? The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a few species abstained, wanting time to study the proposal further, but the majority saw the value immediately. Vera stepped forward to make an announcement. I nominate Jinho of Earth to serve as the program's first director. He has proven his ability not through credentials but through action. Jinho wanted to protest, to say he was not qualified, but Vara gave him a look that silenced him. The nomination was seconded by the Vorkan representative, then by the Threxian ambassador, then by a dozen others. 3 days later, Jinho stood in his new office on Meridian 7. It was larger than his old quarters, with windows overlooking the station's central plaza. His desk was covered with applications from humans across the galaxy who had heard about the program and wanted to join. The door opened and Kess and Rin bounded in, now large enough to reach his chest when they stood on their hind legs. They were followed by Vera, who carried a data pad full of scheduling requests. 20 species have requested human liaisons, she said. We need to start training programs, establish protocols, create guidelines. Jinho looked at the applications on his desk. There were teachers, farmers, doctors, artists, all kinds of humans who wanted to help build bridges between species. One application made him pause. It was from his younger sister, Yunji, back on Earth. She wrote, I saw your speech at the summit. Grandmother would be so proud. She always said you had the gentlest heart of anyone she knew. I want to help too. I want to show the galaxy what humans can do when we lead with kindness instead of fear. Jinho smiled, his eyes misty. He approved her application immediately. Over the next year, the program grew beyond anyone's expectations. Human liaisons were placed on stations throughout the galaxy. They worked in schools, hospitals, diplomatic missions, anywhere that species interaction occurred. They taught simple techniques that Jinho had used instinctively. Listen more than you speak. Show respect through action. Treat others the way you would want to be treated when scared and vulnerable. The changes were subtle at first. Diplomatic incidents decreased. Trade negotiations became friendlier. Species that had maintained cold relations for generations began to warm to each other. And everywhere these changes happened, there was usually a human liaison, quietly working in the background, building bridges one gentle interaction at a time. 2 years after finding the cubs, Jinho received a message that made him laugh with joy. The Galactic Council was establishing an interspecies nursery on Meridian 7, where young from different species could play and learn together under human supervision. It was a radical idea that would have been impossible before. The nursery's first day was chaos in the best possible way. Young Kethrans played with Kilans, carefully learning to control their strength. Vorkan cubs shared toys with Threxian hatchlings, and overseeing it all were human caregivers, including Yunji, who had proven to have the same gentle touch as her brother. Jinho watched from the observation window as Kes and Rin, now adolescents preparing for their adult trials, helped younger cubs feel comfortable. They had learned from him and were now teaching others. The cycle continued, spreading kindness like seeds in fertile ground. Vara joined him at the window. Do you remember what you said to me that first night? You said every kid deserves to feel safe. I remember, Jinho said. You have given that gift to thousands of young ones across the galaxy. You have changed the future. She paused, watching her cubs interact gently with smaller species. On behalf of my people, on behalf of all the species who have benefited from your kindness, thank you. Jinho did not have words adequate for the moment, so he simply nodded. Below them, a human child played with a Kethran cub, both laughing in the universal language of joy. The galaxy was learning what Earth's animals had learned millennia ago. Humans were dangerous not because they hunted, but because they made you feel safe, they made you feel loved, and once they did that, you would follow them anywhere. The predator's cubs had gone missing and were found sleeping on a man's chest. That simple event had changed everything, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can reshape entire civilizations. And somewhere Jinho's grandmother smiled, knowing her lessons had reached the stars.